Yes, indeed, folks, you're listening to Blue Lizard here and sitting... I don't know, I'm sorry, I'm just too lazy. I can't be bothered to finish the sentence. It's like Blizzard can't be bothered to give us more than one raid per tier. Or any reasonable bosses. Well, okay, that is a little bit unfair. There are some reasonable bosses. So, I want to talk about one of those reasonable bosses. That is the reason that this segment is existing. Now, after this, I'll do the Illusion of Choice, and then I'm going to go on and do some streaming, hopefully, of the Elemental Bonds quest line, hoping that everything will not be completely balked for that. Certainly hope so. Now, all of that streaming will be available on the Justin TV, as well as on the YouTube channel in an edited form after the fact. Just bear that in mind. Okay, so what did we do? Well, we managed to do Alysrazor. As I do, I mean... occasionally not disconnect from Alysrazor. So very kind of them, isn't it? Yes, so very kind. Not kind! It's like, oh god, why? So many disconnections. But from what I saw of Alysrazor, it was pretty damn awesome. It's mostly because most, and I do mean most bosses, don't allow me to fly through the frickin' sky through rings of fire, shooting at a giant phoenix. Pretty awesome, is that not? That's a cool idea. Very cool idea, actually. Incredibly cool idea. Awesome idea, one might say. Now, I don't know how much fun it was for everyone that wasn't flying through the air on wings of flame and nuking the crap out of some giant bird, but in this case, I liked it. Hey, look, it's something interesting for the DPS to do for a change. Okay, that's unfair. DPS often get to do fairly interesting things, but you know what I mean. So, what exactly... is Alysrazor all about? So, Alysrazor is a Firebird boss inside of Twilight Highlands. No, it's not. What am I saying the Twilight Highlands for? It's because I've just logged onto the PTR and I instantly engage a Twilight Retainer and it's like, huh, I see fire, Firelands, Twilight, Twilight Highlands, Twilight Firelands, derp. Why I talk... it's always a terrible idea. I shouldn't do anything of the sort. Lord. Oh my. So bad. Yeah, Alysrazor is a boss inside the Firelands. And the Firelands has 7 bosses, as you're probably well aware. It doesn't seem to have a suitable hard mode boss, which is funny because they said they'd put one into every dungeon. They lied. They lied their asses off. Apparently. Not happy about that. Not in any way at all. I was really, really unhappy. Because I was hoping they'd actually keep to that particular promise. But they didn't. It makes me irritated. Wasn't pleasant, folks. Was not pleasant in any way. I was upset. But Alysrazor is a really good boss. Really good boss, and I do mean that. And I said this show is often critical, but I like to praise things that are very good. And in this case, what is very, very good, as I get DC'd from the PTR again, is the fact that they've made a boss that seems to be really, really interactive and actually has a heroic dynamic to it. I think perhaps this is something that Blizzard doesn't do all that well. And it's something that other games companies do really, really well. I like to cite as an example of really awesome heroic bosses, things like God of War, where you are fighting ancient Greek gods from the Pantheon and all that kind of good stuff, and often the scale and the actual sense of weight to the encounter makes you feel awesome. Bayonetta would be another good example. Had some amazing bosses in that as well. Huge things. Fantastic. World of Warcraft, yeah, it's got some big bosses. The problem is that most of the time, what you are doing in these amazing, wonderful bosses is standing still hitting number 2. And that isn't all that interesting. There is no weight to that. More often than not, in games with giant bosses, you'll find that combat is very fluid and dynamic. You don't just stand on the same spot. As opposed to World of Warcraft, where you pretty much always have to stand in the same spot until the area says, well, no, you can't stand here anymore because there's fire and lava and horrible things, so you're not allowed to be here anymore, at which point you, of course, move, and then you start the whole thing up again. Yeah, that's not all that interesting. The thing about Alysrazor, as I hit my pop shield with a certain fervour, is that, at least for 2 people, you actually get the heroic part of the fight. As in, I am flying through the air at really fast speeds through wings of fire, and yeah, this is great. And I don't see how that could not be interesting, honestly. And you're dodging things as well, and in the heroic version of the fight, you're going to be dodging an awful lot more. So, it's a really dynamic fight for a couple of people, at least. It's not so great for others, which is unfortunate, but it seems to me it's the start of Blizzard considering that their game needs to move beyond guys standing around and nuking a boss. And that's a good thing. They definitely have to do that, without question. It must be done. It has to be done. They have to advance the way that PvE encounters actually happen. They have to keep up with the times. What was cool 6 years ago, as Blizzard is already well aware, as they have come up with more advanced mechanics as we go, is not cool now. Although, unfortunately, they seem to have forgotten that when they put Naxxramas back into the game, and then when they put Zul'Aman back into the game, and to a lesser extent Zul'Gurub, which, while not using the same bosses, use a lot of the same mechanics, and certainly all of the same terrain. You have to advance things. You have to bring things forward. Now, from what I've seen for the Firelands thus far, they're doing an exceptionally good job of doing just that. It's just very unfortunate that it's only 7 bosses, because this is the way to kill the goodwill that those kind of changes actually bring to the game. It's the same way that, say, you killed the goodwill for the Crusaders Colosseum. You've got 5 bosses there, and of the bosses, which are really good, well, I wouldn't say that the PvP fight was all that good. Again, you've done something fairly similar to this already. Magistus Terrace, if I recall correctly, had a similar boss encounter, so that wasn't all that amazing. I think the standout boss in there is the Ikaruga boss, which is the Twin Valkyr. That was a suitably dynamic fight, and people really appreciated it when it came out. The problem is that when they went in there week in, week out, and they realized that really there's not all that much to this dungeon, they started to resent the whole thing. Because it was just a 5-person dungeon, and that was actually the only place to go for Tier 9 content. The only place. That's when they started hating its guts. And worse still, back in those days, you could actually do the 10, the 25, and then the heroic 10, then the heroic 25. Oh my god. Yeah. You could do the same dungeon 4 times per week, and that might not sound bad until you realize it's a goddamn raid! You can't do that! No! Hell, it's bad enough that you require... you don't require people to do that, except you do! You know, back in the day, you didn't require people to go into the same dungeon 4 times a week. The problem is that now you do. Almost perfect numbers, in fact. 4 and 3. If people want to get the maximum number of Valor points, then they head into the Zul'Aman and the Zul'Gurub, and those are the only dungeons on that tier. So they're getting free Maelstrom Crystals, which everybody loves magical Maelstrom Crystals, and they are also getting for themselves, which is more important, the Valor points. And that's the way to get the maximum number of the damn things. And what you do there is you throw away the goodwill towards those dungeons. Now, I don't have any goodwill towards Zul'Aman at all, because Zul'Aman, they barely changed anything. It's a lazy, lazy port. And I like lazy ports, folks. I cannot stand them, in fact. They are disgraceful. It's bad, 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 bad. Now, in the case of the Firelands, you've got some really good encounters, from what I can tell. Alysrazor is really awesome. It's a bit easy at the minute, but the US version did seem to be significantly more difficult. They have added, as far as I can tell, more flame tornadoes to the spinny flame tornado phase. They have given Alysrazor more health, which means that simply just nuking her down once she gets exhausted is no longer an option. You've got to go through more phases, the fight lasts a bit longer, and of course that means there are more opportunities to completely screw it the hell up. However, if you have the same tier and you're doing the same 7 bosses over and over and over again, then any goodwill that comes from that fight will evaporate, simply because it's the only place to go. And it's the same reason why, when I was a kid, I resented going to Scotland. We used to go to the same place every year. And now that I'm older, I totally understand why they went there. Yeah? Absolutely. You know, there were various benefits to going there. I don't personally want to go back, because I don't find it all that enjoyable. I have different interests when it comes to holidays. So I wouldn't find going to Scotland all that entertaining. And I certainly didn't back in the day. I absolutely hated it. After a while, anyway. I liked it the first few times. The problem is it got really, really, really dull. And that's the same thing. If this is the only place you get to go, even if it's supposed to be for enjoyment, you eventually grow to resent it. That's a very bad idea. Now, some people might say, well, Total Biscuit, people would surely go back to the heroics, right? They go to the heroic dungeons. They might, or they might not. Because as we've seen, actually, the people doing heroic raids, the number of people is very, very low. There are not a lot. And I justify it very simply. You need to simply go over to WoW Progress to find out exactly why that is. Let's have a look-see. We're going to have a look at heroics. There we go. Fantastic. Just what we always wanted. So, the most common heroic dungeon. We'll have a look at this. I believe, is that... yeah, I'm just doing a few maths on this. Yeah, it would be. The most common heroic dungeon is the Bastion of Twilight. Heroic Bastion of Twilight. This is the heroic raid, at least. And the reason behind that is because more people have killed Cho'Gall than have killed Alysrazor or Nefarian. Now, back before this came out, I don't know if this is still the case, but before the dungeons came out, and before Cataclysm actually got released, Blizzard said that what would be happening is that you would be unable to unlock heroic raid encounters without beating the final boss of the dungeon. I don't know. Is that still the case? Because they did promise this, but I don't know if they ever implemented that. No doubt somebody can tell me. Can you unlock heroic raid encounters without beating the entire normal mode? I would like to know. Let me know in the chat channel if you can. Because that's what they promised, and I don't know if they actually decided that they would do that. However, yes? Can we do this? No? Well, that's useful. No. Okay, apparently you can't. Right, you definitely can't. Yes. No. The leader has to have done it. Right, well, yeah, that's fine. So you can't then. Okay, no problem. Right. That's fine then. So, here are the mathematics for you. Figure this one out for me. Cho'Gall has been killed by 28,636 guilds. Heroic Harvest Wormbreaker has been killed by 15,845 guilds. Now, does that mean that Heroic Harvest Wormbreaker is much, much harder than Cho'Gall to the point where guilds cannot down him? And let's also then point out that the drop down from that to Valion and Thuralion is 3,893. Or how about this divide? This is even more extreme. 21,000 guilds have killed Alysrazor. Do you want to know how many guilds have killed Heroic Conclave of Wind? 4.66. Now, I refuse to believe that is all down to difficulty 6 months into this expansion. I do not believe that one little bit. You want to know what I think? I think that people actually don't care about heroics. And the people, for the most part, do not view going back into the same dungeon for slightly upgraded loot and a harder boss experience to be a worthwhile thing. And as a result, I don't think that going back into heroics is going to be a sufficient justification for people to not get bored with the next tier of Firelands. And it's a shame, because as far as I can tell, the encounters are really great. But because of Blizzard's development attitude right now, thinking, oh, well, 7 bosses should be enough for anyone, right? Oh, and we have heroic mode, so really, we've got 14 bosses. And oh, you didn't do all the heroic modes in the last patch, so blatantly you've got to do those as well before you can complain about lack of content. That's the problem. That's the current issue with Blizzard's design philosophy, and that's why people are getting annoyed. And I'm one of them. My name is Total Biscuit, you're listening to Blue Please right here on CynicalBrit.com. We'll come back with the illusion of choice, and then we'll see about trying to stream the Elemental Bonds quest line. Here's hoping that it actually works. This is in memory of the PTR. It's called I'm Broken. Enjoy.